Right now, let's talk to Jamie Jenkins, our favourite statistician, who basically remembered Rachel Reeves in her final moments as not exactly the greatest Chancellor we've ever had. Jamie, very good morning to you. You said payroll jobs are down, borrowing is up, debt interest is enormous, taxes are rising, business confidence is weak, GDP per head is under pressure. And this is in response, of course, to her Mansion House speech, where she didn't burst into tears for a change, but she said that she'd fixed the foundations. I don't think so.
Yeah, morning, Mike. If she's fixed the foundations of your building while you're doing the show, you might start sinking before 10 o'clock. I think, looking at it, but yeah, she's very good at spinning stuff. And I did notice the tears that were coming out again yesterday. Prime Minister's questions, Mike. Obviously, they were the tears not for Starmer. They're probably the tears that she's losing her job next week because there's no way she's going to be staying on as Chancellor. And what have we had this morning, Mike? We're breaking this morning the latest GDP figures for May. So let's celebrate that big 0.1% growth that we've had in May, which is basically 0.1% growth, Mike. And it fell in April anyway. So no doubt she's going to come out later and say, oh, blame the Iran war and all of this. But we've seen production down, construction down. If these are the fixing the foundations, Mike, definitely don't go buy a house from her building company.
No.
I'd say that anyway.
No, exactly. And also, this is the same woman who just last Sunday, when she was being interviewed by Laura Kuenssberg, when she was asked what was the biggest mistake or her advice to her to her successor, don't cry at work, she goes. And then yesterday, she was at it again weeping.
Oh, Mike, crocodile tears, isn't it? And let's look at the legacy she's leaving us. We've got borrowing around 274.3 billion since the start of, since the election. We've the jobs, the payroll jobs you're talking about a minute on, they're down. Ultimately, that's all people want, Mike, isn't it? Is the government to come in. Remember, the government's elected to represent the people, to try and help the people, not kind of impose higher taxes and more borrowing and spending more money abroad and all that nonsense that's going on. So if Starmer and Reeves have been doing such a good job, which Starmer's, I think he said yesterday, didn't he, that he's left the country in a better shape than what he did 2 years ago. And Reeves' mansion tax talking about how great the economy is and she's fixed the phone. If they're so good, well, why the hell is Starmer being kind of pushed out and Reeves is going to be sacked next week? Yeah. That's the ultimate question. They're both off because it's been an utter dire shambles.
But wasn't it shameful though yesterday to watch all the kind of hypocrisy in Parliament? I don't think I've ever seen quite as much hypocrisy in one fell swoop as them all kind of waving their order papers and cheering. And when he said leaving the country in a better place than it was when I inherited it, another great big cheer. And you go, hang on a minute. I mean, even Ian Dale, who's relatively sort of straightforward on these things, was like, it's pretty sick making watching that because these are all people who have forced Starmer and Reeves out, and now they're all congratulating them on what a great job they've done.
Yeah, and why are they forcing him out, Mike? It's mainly because they want to try and keep their job, haven't they? Because there's only one way things were going with Starmer in charge. Is we had the local elections where loads of councillors have lost their seats. The Senate election, I know they weren't in power in Scotland, but in Wales they got decimated. So Starmer has done one part. He's destroyed the Labour Party. He keeps talking about the fact that after replacing Corbyn, he rebuilt the Labour Party. He's literally... Talk about fixing the foundations, Mike. He's literally blown the foundations of the Labour Party up, and that's why Andy Burnham's been the chosen one. And the fact that all those backbench MPs and the rest of the cabinet, not one single person between them were competent enough to challenge to be a prime minister. That they had to do some dodgy deal to get Andy Burnham in. It just goes to show how shambolic the whole party itself was, Mike.
Well, exactly right. And Burnham has not exactly set his stall out in a way which I think anyone would be confident about him doing a good job at, because he's done 2 interviews thus far. He's done Andrew Marr. He's done now Gary Lineker, who's I'm baffled as to why he would do that. And then the only other thing he's done is he went on Reddit one afternoon and said, send in your questions. I'll see how many of them I can answer. And then the whole thing fell over. So, I mean, he's had no scrutiny whatsoever, has he?
Well, no, and I think he got some questions, didn't he, from some GB News presenters, and he wouldn't even answer them. And so yeah, you're right. Burnham's had absolutely no scrutiny, and the problem you've got here, Mike, is at least when Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak went to the country, well, the Conservative Party, that is, to try and decide who's going to be the leader, you get a view as to what they're planning on doing. So we've got a new Prime Minister starting. with no idea what he's planning on doing. And let's not forget, the Labour Party got elected on a manifesto. I know we've had so many U-turns that I think Starmer's probably feeling dizzy from turning and turning and turning around all the time, Mike. And we got no idea. I read this week, and I did write on my Substack earlier in the week, Mike, with some of the backbench Labour MPs calling for Andy Burnham to increase foreign aid. So if this is the kind of area where we go, and if you think now, we spent 13 billion on foreign aid in 2025. We're borrowing money. So in May alone, we borrowed 23.3 billion. We haven't got money to be sending abroad, Mike. Personally, I would get rid of all foreign aid, not increase it, just scrap the whole thing completely. We can't afford it. So if Burnham's going to go down this less appeal to the backbenchers, and let's have more welfare, let's have more spending, where's he going to get that? He's going to have to pay for more tax, isn't he? And we're already going to increase taxes.
And he doesn't really know exactly where he's going with that, but it looks like he's going to try and get some tax on more capital gains. Looks like he's going to try and get some more business rates out of people, maybe some more council tax out of people. But he hasn't got many places to go, has he?
Well, no, and the reason the growth figures are so weak, Mike, is because when you just keep taxing and giving it to kind of the unproductive part of the economy, and like the public sector is a good example as well, that's been increasing under Rachel Reeves. When you just keep increasing taxes, there's less money. People think, oh, I'm not quite sure if I want to go spending any money because my taxes are going up. Put more money in people's pockets, Mike. They go out and spend it, and then you start getting economic growth. There's no. The key things Burnham needs to be thinking about, and Ed Miliband, there was obviously this talk about Shabana Mahmood or Ed Miliband or even West Street in his Chancellor. Well, obviously that'll all come out in the next week or so. But Ed Miliband, this whole madness of net zero, the biggest tax cut technically you could do for the British population is just sort the energy bills out, because if you can get those, that's the key part. But the Labour Party have no coherent policy on that. Miliband's got no interest in doing that, Mike. And ultimately, when you've got all this going on, that's why the growth figures today are poor. Reeves has been a total disaster, completely out of her depth. So that's one silver lining of Starmer going, is Reeves is going to be going. But I fear that when we continue now, we'll be talking for the next 6 to 12 months, Mike, about things aren't getting any better, they're getting worse. So that Tony Blair music that he was playing for D. Ream, things are only going to get better. They can bin that one off before we even start with that.
Well, exactly right. Well, I was mentioning that yesterday, one of my little video that I put out from after Prime Minister's questions. Yeah, I mean, the cost of things now is extraordinary. I was in a chemist yesterday buying some Nurofen Plus. It was £12.50. And it used to be something like, I'm pretty sure the last time I bought it was only a couple of months ago, it was a tenner. It's now £12.50. It used to be about a year or so ago, about £8. I don't know whether it's just making it up now. The amount of money that you pay for stuff now is prodigious.
Well, yeah, but Mike, there's a good explanation for that one. Is because we've had 2 years of a Labour government, so the amount of headaches people have had in the country,
massive demand.
So Nurofen, they haven't got enough supply of it, Mike. So that's where the prices are going up.
That must be what it is. Yeah, supply and demand. Finally, what about the BBC? They've said that they've lost another 539,000 licenses. One of the things that really annoys me about watching the football over the course of the last few weeks, whether it's on the BBC or whether you're listening to it on the radio on the BBC, they keep putting out these little messages saying, don't forget, you can watch all your favourite programmes if you just get yourself a licence, more kind of, sort of intrusion into your life, into your world, basically saying, if you don't have a licence, you shouldn't be watching it.
Yeah, I've never seen so many adverts on the BBC, considering they don't do adverts, Mike. The amount of adverts they've been doing for the TV licence, especially, half time during the football, they'll say, scan this QR code to pay for your licence fee. Well, most people who are watching on the BBC should probably have one. But you're right. So what we've seen, Mike, is another 539,000 licence fees have vanished in the last year, 300,000 the year before. And ultimately, Mike, shows like yourself, where people can come onto YouTube. If you don't watch live TV that's kind of broadcast across the country on normal traditional television channels, you don't need a licence fee, Mike. So people can watch the likes of yourself now. They've got choice. And people are voting and moving away from the BBC and the model of the BBC, Mike. I've mentioned before, I worked in the newsroom shortly in the 2015 general election. And the model of the BBC is broken because there's so much choice out there. If you just go onto YouTube now, I think it's literally overtaken. It's one of the biggest broadcasting platforms, not just in the world, but in Britain now. But if you've got so much choice with Netflix, Disney Plus, you could roll and reel off loads of different options. And I tweeted about this the other day, and somebody said, but the BBC does all great things like last night at the proms and the news and everything. I thought, well, I remember during COVID, Mike, that's how kind of we got to know each other a lot with all the ramblings about what was going on in COVID. But the amount of nonsense the BBC was putting out around COVID, where they just miraculously turned up to a ward where nearly everybody was unvaccinated, apparently, when the data showed that the vast majority of people in hospital were kind of had the vaccine because they were generally older. They just seemed to just misrepresent what the hell was going on. So to talk about the BBC being a trustworthy news organisation, which is why there's that paper, isn't there, about putting them up on the algorithms on social media, is absolute nonsense. So ultimately, Mike, people vote with where they want to go, and they're voting away from the BBC. They're voting more for channels like yourself, Mike, and that is ultimately why we need to scrap the licence fee. If the BBC wants to survive on YouTube, put good content and people will watch it. You don't need to be pushed up the algorithm or given money to basically make it.
No, well, I've said before we should issue a Mike Graham TV show license, and it's a lot less than the BBC one, and it's a lot more enjoyable as well. You can watch it anytime you like. You don't have to watch it when they say you have to watch it, you know. Jamie, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Jamie Jenkins there with the latest from the world of statistics.